Take the trip because we knew it was going to be very, very interesting, and it was.
The Woods Hole team wants to explore the interior of Titanic, but Alvin is too large to go inside safely. The U.S. Navy has already provided funds for Ballard to construct a small robotic probe to penetrate the torpedo tubes of the sunken nuclear sub, the USS Scorpion. Their goal, to try to examine the status of any live nuclear weapons which might still be on board.
Once we found the Titanic, it meant we could actually now explore it with this technology that we'd really developed for the Scorpion.
Ballard gives his team at the Deep Submergence Lab the go-ahead to start work on the tiny robot. They adapt key systems from a larger robot currently in blueprint stage called Jason. They dub the smaller robot Jason Jr., or JJ. The plan is to attach the probe to Alvin by a tether.
This vehicle was developed with the idea that it would allow the submarine to send a camera into areas and spaces that were hazardous or too small for the vehicle, for the submersible itself to go into.
Dr. Ballard came to us and said, I need a swimming eyeball. I need a robotic vehicle or a TV camera that I can put inside underwater wrecks.
We were to leave the next day for the Titanic, and we still hadn't ever had Jason Jr. on board Alvin and in the water and working.
The Woods Hole research vessel Atlantis II leaves on July 9, 1986, with the engineers still trying to make sure Jason Jr. will work in conjunction with Alvin. And just as in 1985, the Navy intends to share the technology for its covert operations. But this time, the plan is for the operations around the Titanic to take place first. Then, as the world is focusing on the results, the Navy will use the same equipment to further explore two of America's sunken nuclear submarines. July 12, 1986, the Woods Hole team returns to the satellite position they left nearly a full year before. By the next morning, they are ready to attempt their first dive with the submersible, with Jason tucked into its cage aboard Alvin. There's a heightened state of anxiety among the crew. Diving near a wreck in freezing water 2.5 miles under the ocean is not a routine task.
Cables are the things that can really bite you. If they get wrapped up in a prop or something snagged, then you've got a problem, because then you're anchored to the wreck.
Folks in 1912 put all their faith into this new technology to sail them from one side of the ocean to the other. Well, here we were, putting all our faith in another machine to transport us from the surface to the bottom and back again.
After all this time, someone will be paying this monument a visit. 8:30 a.m. ship time, July 13th, Dive 1. Alvin's crew is filled with both fear and expectation. The three men, Bob Ballard, pilot Ralph Hollis, and co-pilot Dudley Foster, settled in for their 2.5-hour descent.
Well, the first dive was sort of like the Titanic. Everything went wrong. As soon as we got in the water, everything just bellied up.
We started getting water leak indication in our batteries, which started cause a lot of concern, because when you get salt water mixed with lead-acid batteries, it's a really bad thing.
Then we lost our sonar, so we're blind acoustically. So here we are on the bottom of the ocean. Somewhere around here is the Titanic.
We were sort of moving around the bottom blindly, you might say. We could only see about 40 feet. So it was sort of a surprise when we came up on it.
Went on forever. As we came up, it just went on and then faded out of sight.
By now, the leak in the batteries is critical, and the alarms are blaring.
Ralph said, we gotta go. We're flooding. And we punched out. It got 12 seconds, but there it was.
Alvin returns to the surface. Engineers and technicians work through the night to make sure the same thing won't happen again. Due to their hard work, Dive 2 is a very different story.
I landed about 30 meters away, and then when we drove into it, it just filled the entire viewport. It was like driving up to a wall, a rusty wall.
When we went down and actually got a close look, all that was left of the pilot house almost was just the steering control module sticking up.
Gorgeous. Keep going.
Equipment problems plagued Jason Jr.'s engineers, but so far, no problem is life-threatening. Until July 24th, when everyone's worst fear comes true. The danger starts as Bob Ballard, Dudley Foster, and Martin Bowen send their robotic probe toward the ship's inner stairway.
I got a little adventurous with the robot at one point. We went down the boat deck, over the rail, toward the promenade deck. I realized that the tether had gotten pinched in a portion of the railing. So now I had to figure out, well, okay, now I've made an anchor for all three of us. And if I can't get this free, and if the explosive bolts don't go off, we're anchored here forever. What I did was turn the robot around, look at us, look at the catch point, and fly the robot on a path that would pull this out of the pinch point and allow the submersible to bring the tether back in. It was kind of automatic for me, but I think for the other two people in the submersible, it was kind of tense.
Got a lot of tether out.
In all, there are 12 different dives, most of them highly successful. But perhaps the highlight of the entire cruise is Dive 3, when Martin Bowen maneuvers JJ down Titanic's first-class grand staircase.
That was really spooky because it's just this giant hole up on the top, and I had to set the sub on the deck there and move ahead far enough for JJ to go straight down.
Amazingly, they find a crystal lighting fixture hanging almost as though the violence of April 15th, 1912 never happened.
To see this sort of crystalline light fixture was one of the things that really made it a personal experience to me, that those human sort of artifacts, that gives you the connection.
I felt like I was dancing in the ballroom. It was a culmination of everything. I mean, the 86 expedition was a celebration. I mean, it was over.
In the absence of more testing or hard science to do here, the Woods Hole team leaves for home on July 24th, 1986.
Everyone was fixated on my Titanic expedition. They didn't know that right after we did Titanic, the ship left again. It left with Alvin, left with Jason Jr., and went and did the Scorpion. And the Thresher. And the press never caught it.
In recently declassified footage, we see Jason Jr. specially reconfigured to fit through the Scorpion's missile tubes, the better to examine the status of the nuclear weapons on board. Even as the Navy does its investigations at the submarines, Woods Hole technicians are back in their labs, sifting through the data they compiled on their mission. One key document is this mosaic, created from 100 images selected from the over 57,000 shots taken by the still camera device Angus in 1986. It gives a view impossible to capture any other way because there's no way to illuminate the massive structure in the inky darkness of its 12,500-foot depth.
The whole scenario of Titanic's loss, the nature of the damage that she suffered from the iceberg, all of that has been rewritten as a result of the expeditions.
With their duties at Titanic over, the scientists and engineers from Woods Hole take what they've learned from their equipment tests on Titanic and start building the next generation of deep-sea robots and imaging systems. The visit to Titanic marks a high point in the careers of the team members, but it also leaves another kind of mark.
We wanted to commemorate the sinking, and we took bronze plaques down, one on the bow, one on the stern, hoping that people would leave the ship alone. And that was our hope.